Ricky felt back to his little buddies and could barely feel any left. The grim realization swelled in intense camaraderie, respect, fear, and rage at the same time. He raised his pickaxe and charged at the man-demon as fast as his little legs could go. A whole second wave of locusts began raising up behind the man-demon as winds picked up and he started cackling maniacally. So many have tried, all gone, only me. Then as Ricky began to close the distance, a shot rang out. It barely fell short, kicking gravel onto the man. Many pieces of shrapnel lodged in the possessed businessman, but he didn't seem to notice. Ricky didn't stumble and kept going. As he got closer, he saw the guy was in a ripped and torn business suit and looked horrible, but Ricky didn't feel sorry and yelled as he ran full steam ahead. The man-demon turned to face the new threat, as Ricky felt the rifle in the distance race half a millimeter. The follow-up shot which came a second later slammed into bugs that the man-demon had feared up into the projectile's path. It slammed into 20 or 30 until it veered off course, barely missing the shell of a man. As the bullet whizzed by the empty shell's face, he grinned off into the distance and then remembered Ricky was there at the same time. Nice trick. She made you believe she wouldn't be here to fool me. Mortimer dove off Ricky's shoulder and slammed into the red tub of crap, biting into his throat. Ricky slashed with his hog hammer, but missed his mark as the guy suddenly regained some control over his body. Not realizing its importance, he instinctively put up his hand to guard from the melee attack and was rewarded with the machine in it being damaged. The demon gasped as Mortimer stopped wasting his time with the monster's throat and went for its eye. He wiggled his little arms around trying to stop the attack but couldn't. He yelled for a shell to help him, but the guy's eyes went wide with horror. Ricky bonked him hard with the blunt end of the hog hammer. Mortimer was going to town on one eye and was about to go to the other eye as the red demon thrashed violently, then vanished. The shell laid on the ground mumbling and moaning as Ricky backed away from him, unsure what to do. Seconds later, the locusts focused their attention on his defenseless body and had portions of him down to bone in mere moments. Ricky scooted away on his butt with his legs and got up before they decided he was meal-worthy again. Ricky started to walk away to try to address the larger locust problem when another shot rang out and Ricky flinched for the first time, hearing that rifle fire. Was it finally his time? Was this Panika's way of ending their relationship and taking his turf as their own? When Ricky realized a split second later that he was still conscious and standing, he turned around. At his feet was the headless corpse of the businessman, far closer to Ricky than he was moments earlier. A trail of the locusts strewn 20 feet from where Ricky had left his partially devoured body seconds earlier. Ricky waved off into the distance with a silly grin on his face, feeling the magnification of a scope on him. His pocket buzzed and he picked up the phone. It simply had a winky face. This put a little hop in his step as Ricky grabbed the busted device and ran to the far edge of the locusts. Benika's black rats stormed into the vulnerable set of the locusts, devouring them by the thousands. When Ricky got to the edge of the carnivorous and cannibalistic brown locusts and back into the green, more docile ones, he started fiddling with the machine he found. He felt Mortimer on his shoulder, quite pleased with himself, as if he was super proud for messing up such a horrible monster many times his size. Ricky was proud of him also. They were a perfect team. Ricky focused on the machine and tried to figure it out. He was pretty bad with electronics. He held some of the pieces together that looked like they came apart and pressed the button. Didn't work at first, but a couple of tries and all the locusts lurched away from him a bit. Ricky got into a better position and cranked the knob up to full power, and all the remaining locusts jumped right into the lake without even time to think about what was happening. Ricky was in awe as to how many there still were. It was horrifying. Not as horrifying as what the locusts were going through, though. Thousands of frogs were waiting with their mouths open on the lake. The frogs ate for several hours and became very fat frogs. Before anyone could come, Ricky took the machine and threw it into the lake as far as it would go, then headed home. The devastation was horrible. Nearly 80% of his rats were gone. Locust parts were everywhere, where the rats had stopped eating them and chomped and moved on. The birds were already down to earth, cleaning up everything that looked like an easy snack to their respective subspecies. Ricky thought it would have been nice to have their help earlier, but most of them were tiny bug eaters and usually only preferred fruits and seeds. He didn't mind. It was usually rats who did the heavy lifting anyway. Ricky decided to stay and help his rats out on the spot. He sat by the lake and made sure none of the locusts somehow got back out, or that the ones Beninka was shoving this way didn't get too far. Ricky got all of his rats untied in time for Beninka to shove the second group towards him, and he angled them into the water with her help and the help of his remaining rat forces. They held them at the waterline for hours as all the frogs in the area conglomerated for a feeding frenzy that would have made piranhas or sharks jealous. Ricky finished untying all the rats from their Rat King formations, and they all dispersed to see what there was to do. Before long they reported that the black rats were coming, which they had grown fond of and were happy to see. When they all came in, Ricky raised a curious eyebrow as he noticed one of the young ratlings was brown with black spots. He'd never seen one like it before, and he put his hand out to see if it was real, and it loved his hand up and then took off down the beach. Off in the distance he saw the flamethrowers going of the neighbors cleaning up the edge of the locusts. Every few minutes another Rat King would come, and he'd untangle them, and off they'd go in separate directions. They were thankful for the safety they provided each other, but were happy to be free. Not as many came back as he wanted, but at least some were left. Enough to start over. The sun started to go low in the sky, and Benika finally found him and sat down. Neither saying anything, the wind finally calmed. As the sun began to set, Benika quietly and solemnly grabbed Ricky's hand, and they went back to their little hidey spot together. All the remaining rats followed in tow to the deafening echo chamber of happy frogs. Around Benika and Ricky's feet, spiders clamored around the webbing, up any locusts who tried to think they could have somehow survived the epic battle for later spider chow. Sleep time. Ricky and Benika stood at the edge of the giant lake. A biomass of frogs were still catching and eating locusts. As it turns out, the locusts can walk on water and even swim. The rats and spiders encircled the lake, though, and ate any who tried to get out. After a little while, Martina skipped over and gave them both big hugs. The town is very happy, and thanks you both. We did a really good job today, didn't we? Benika tousled her hair in response. You did really good, kid. We're both proud of you. A fourth person silently walked up to them along the water's edge. His presence was foreign, but somehow also very familiar, like he'd been there the whole time, but they hadn't specifically noticed him. The frog is very happy and proud to have such good friends on the land. The three of them nodded at each other, and he came over to stand with them, staring into the lake and beyond. They were all quiet for a while, then he spoke again. This lake, it was not here before. It's pretty cool. I like it. They all agreed with him and hung out at the lake all night long together. Everyone too exhausted to even talk, except for Martina, who kept getting up to point out more spots for spider webs and nests. She kept cracking everyone up as her youthful energy was so much fun to watch. Chapter 23. Everyone's happy. Back in the rat base. The coming weeks. After the epic four-way battle, peace stretched across the land. The bulk of the locusts were held in the lake, as the frogs continued eating them for days. Only a few got out, returned to the normal balance of them being green, solitary, and peaceful. They'd come together every few weeks for their brief ritual and would immediately separate again. The other creatures were plenty able to keep them at their normal numbers, like how it's supposed to go. Ricky and Beninka returned to let the CDC know that everything went okay, and eventually they came out and reacclimated with what was left of society.